Okay, hello everyone. My name is Marianne Gabrielsson and I am a master student at University of Gothenburg, and my main research interest lies within death and burial practices. This presentation is a summary of my research about bogs as living bodies and narrative actants within the liminal phase. And the conceptual framework I used is a combination of actant, liminality, nomadic subject, emotional charge, and bodies in becoming. The choice of these specific concepts is based on their shared interest for transformation, interaction, and encounters between the human and non-human. From a particular microarchaeological perspective, I combine three analytical tools: witihn, seriality, and intra-action. For the same reasons as with the conceptual framework, the shared interest in relations and actions between human and non-human as in structures, perceptions, and transitions. The research focus on two questions. What actual significance do bogs have on our perceptions of practices concerning liminality, transformation, and transition? And if considering bogs as bodies, in what way can we use them as lens for changing perspective through interaction? And to answer these questions, I have analyzed two materialities: the Eutin figures from Germany and the warrior plate from the Gundestrup cauldron from Denmark. So I will begin by giving a brief presentation of the two materialities. In 1948, two gigantic wooden figures, a female and a male, were found in the Aukampe Moor in Germany. The couple is dated through radiocarbon to around 300 to 200 before Common Era. They were carved out of two enormous oak branches with forks as natural legs and holes in the shoulders, maybe to enable the attachment of arms. At the time of discovery, the couple were lying down together just below the surface of the bog, and the oak tree was very well preserved from weather damage, implying they had been placed in the bog in immediate connection to them being produced. When standing upright, the couple appear as two giants, as they are quite tall. The female measures 230 centimeters and the male 275 centimeters. They are completely naked with no attributes other than the detailed carvings of their wide opened eyes and mouths, maybe expressing a gaze beyond this world or a silent communication or sound. They also have significant haircuts, especially the female's Schweber-like knot on top of her head. Common interpretations have the shared denominator incarnation, as they all focus on various forms of how the figures incorporates dead bodies, spirits, or gods. And the other materiality is the warrior plate from the Gundestrup cauldron, which is a silver cauldron discovered in Rävmossebog near Ars in Denmark in 1891. The warrior plate is one of 13 plates constituting the cauldron and one of 5 rectangular inner plates. The cauldron is dated through radiocarbon to around 100 before Common Era to just around Common Era. All plates are very detailed engraved, especially the warrior plate, which tells a complex narrative with illustrations of soldiers, gods, animal, fantasy creatures, and symbols, expressing both hybridity and culture encounters. Common interpretations are based on the shared denominator reincarnation because of their focus on rebirth and mythical stories of transcendence. Now, the result. To answer my first question, we can see how bogs as narrative actants are quite significant for our perceptions and practices as they incorporate our voice, gaze, and expressions, as we can see in the two materialities. When being placed in the bog, the Eutin figures share their eyes and mouths with both the bog and the people of the community, in a silent communication with the community, the bog, and the dead bodies being incarnated, using the bog as mediator between perception and practice. Although the communication is silent, it is simultaneously very loud because of the emotional charge between human, the Eutin figures, the spirits or gods, and the bog. The warrior plate illustrates another context, not so much of incarnation, but rather reincarnation, in its detailed story of soldiers, gods, and rebirth. However, there is still a silent communication which turns into a vivid conversation like the one we can see in the Eutin figures. As such, we can understand bogs as co-actors in our perceptions, practices, and stories of incarnation and reincarnation. They are also the key element for the exchange of emotional charge in order to keep the stories alive. In other words, bogs become the key mediator between human perception and practice. To answer my second question, we can see how bogs become living bodies incorporating the universal mythemes, life-death, body-spirit, earth, other world. These mythemes can be considered as exclusively human inventions. However, when transformed into the bog through emotional charge, they also become inventions of the nature and materiality, which is why we can look at bog bodies as unifying nature, materiality, and culture. This perspective also calls for bogs having not one but many bodies, however with the same foundational function of being mediator and co-actor, overarching the transition between dead object, nomadic subject, and the becoming of a new body. Bog bodies also connects mythemes by overarching the empty space between invisible, visible, or nature culture. As such, bogs incorporate and function as transformation body between chaos and order, emerging body between the invisible and visible body, and nomadic body constantly moving around and between nature and culture. When two bodies meet, we always reflect ourselves in the other. Exactly the same happens when we meet the bog body through intra-action. Through the bog body's lens or gaze, we reflect our own idea worlds, thoughts, intentions, and actions. This meeting also involves a third party, materiality, as bogs are both materia and living body. Intra-action also implies bogs as independent, conscious, and intentional. We often think that we are the ones providing the emotional charge. However, I claim it can just as easily be the other way around. In fact, it is my strong conviction that the initial emotional charge emerges from the bog, and when encountered with the bog, we are confronted with the power, magic, myth, and spirituality living inside its body. As such, the bog body's lens becomes a transparent, always open window, allowing us to exchange perspective, emotional charge, and the understanding of nature and culture working together as collaborators.
Split your atom into one. Find the wheel of transformation. Reaching the heaven of technia. Supercomputer boom. Connection. Explore. Explore.
So from the result, I will highlight two conclusions. We have two materialities and one story. We can also talk of the common denominator movement. As narrative actant, the bog body tells us a story of incarnation and reincarnation. These two phenomena require movement. Despite whether you incarnate or are being reincarnated, there is always movement involved. And as you all know, stories always move in every possible direction: the future, the past, the present, up, down, inward, and outwards, just like the nomadic subject, and just like the bog when telling stories about life, death, gods, spirits, or rebirth. As narrative actant, the bog body transforms itself into being both narrator and protagonist. That is, when we tell a story, we are only the narrator, while the bog body is both narrator, protagonist, and the origin from where the story came to life. Now, what we see in the two materialities is how they represent different serialities and practices, but based on the very same themes. We can also see how they represent different expressions and intentions, but based on the same narrative and intra-action. The Eutin figures tell a story of death, conception, incarnation, and movement within the body, while the warrior plate tells a story of death, transformation, reincarnation, and movement from outside the body. Nevertheless, in both stories, the bog body functions as narrator, mediator, and origin behind the stories, connecting the human world with the spirit world. From the result, we can also understand that movement is both circular and linear, as different linear serialities and practices share the same circular ID world of death, life, incarnation, and reincarnation. Finally, to end this story, there are three things I want to share with you before I go. Through its body, lens, and emotional charge, the bog mediates a narrative implementing the connection between earth, other world, materiality, human, and between life and death. Being a living body telling us stories, the bog also becomes co-actor, collaborator, incorporator, and the one providing us with initial emotional charge, transforming abstract fantasy into concrete reality. And remember, we may die and be long forgotten, but the stories told by the bog will live forever.
When I die, when my coffin is being taken out, you must never think I am missing this world. Don't shed any tears. Don't lament or feel sorry. I am not falling into a monster's abyss. When you see my corpse is being carried, don't cry for my leaving. I am not leaving. I am arriving at eternal love. When you leave me in the grave, don't say goodbye. Remember, a grave is only a curtain for the paradise behind.